I think the responsibility the Archdiocese have to the city of Detroit is to maintain a strong presence. You look at the news, Detroit is getting blasted from everywhere. There's focus with all the events coming. There's desolation. There's focus on it's a bad city, it's not a good place. Well, who's going to give us hope? Who's going to say that city is alive and the city is well? That's part of the church's responsibility.
We need leadership that has a passion for the city and for its people. We feel that many of the decisions being made are made by people who have no passion for the city. Now, the city of Detroit is over 85% African American. And we feel we're part of this city. And we've got people who are not African American making decisions for us in the city. We think that's wrong.
You have to ask yourself, with the church and school closings in the city of Detroit, why is it happening? From the Archdiocese standpoint, it's an economic issue. But from my standpoint, and some of my colleagues in the Alliance, we think it's an issue of racism. You have a population, 85%, 90% population of people of color in Detroit. And it seems like the church is abandoning Detroit with the church and school closings.
Institutional racism is part of the fabric and fiber of our society. It's part of the air we breathe. You may not be conscious of the air you breathe, but you're breathing it. And there is racism. Institutional racism is really undergirds many of the problems that we're having.
That is not the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is open to everyone, regardless of race, ethnic background, and so on. And we cannot have that kind of institutional racism. But now we seem to be going back to it. Institutionally, we're reinforcing the white churches in the suburbs and staffing them adequately, and that's and then closing, on the other hand, churches in the city. We say partly because they're too small, but what's too small? I mean, the smaller the community, the more you can really develop a community life and have a real sense of people knowing one another, caring for one another, just like it was in the earliest days of the church, where everybody in the community was taken care of because everybody looked out for everybody else and they shared their goods and so on.
I'm not naive about the fact that you have to have money to run these operations. There's no question about that. But when you say that that money has to come from the pews, it really restricts what can happen, and also is, if we're talking about being with the people that are in that particular neighborhood, they probably don't have a whole lot of money in their pockets. And that's not to say that everybody in the city is poor at all. But there are a lot of churches where there are a lot of folks who don't have resources. And churches are very creative about how they can raise money, and that should count. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I think you have to talk about how is that church being in the neighborhood. Does it serve as a kind of beacon where people can feel safe, can feel a community, can feel they belong to the people of God, they're included in this church, this parish. There's nobody is excluded. Everybody has a place at the table. If that can be measured, and I think it can be measured, I think all you have to do is hang around for a little while and you can tell, then that, to me, is the number one criteria for keeping a church alive.
Our churches are rehabbing old houses and building new houses for people that is low income. Our churches are feeding the hungry and helping the homeless, because we know there's a lot of men, women, and children that need our service. We are also visiting the sick, and we take communion to the homebound.
We really represent the hand of God and the hand of Jesus here in the city. People come to the churches in Detroit for help. They come in a time of crisis and a time of need, a time of devastation. Without the church here in Detroit, those people wouldn't have any other place to go.
As part of that, the Archdiocese being, you know, a symbol of the church, that's where their responsibility is to say, what can we do to change this image of Detroit? Don't add to it by closing churches. Enhance it by saying, we are keeping the people here. We are going to keep places of worship here, because in their worship, they're gaining strength so that in the political realm, they can speak up. They can improve this city. So there's a major responsibility for the Archdiocese of Detroit.
The central archdiocesan structure does not understand the church in the city. And maybe because they lack understanding, we can forgive them for that, but not for the misuse of their power.
I've been in this parish for over 34 years. I've seen life, I've seen death, I've seen violence, I see coming together. I see everything in life. And I'm a believer of everything I've experienced. So if I were in the suburbs for 34 years, I would see things differently, I'm sure. But I haven't been in the suburbs for 34 years. And what I resent is that the Archbishop consults about the future of the city with people who are living in the suburbs and not with people living in the city.
I believe there should be an urban parish office that works with all of us to make the church the church of the people, and helps the churches to give the message, to minister to the people, to do everything a church should be in the city of Detroit. We need an office that specifically does that. We need leadership that not only acknowledges that, but shares the passion. That's absent. And that's what we need, and that's why there seems to be this gap between what some of us believe and some of us hope and the work that we've been doing and will continue to do. There's this gap between us and them. And the only way I can describe it is, yeah, there's racism at the bottom of this whole thing. I believe it very firmly. A misuse of power and a benign neglect. But there's also the gap is degrees of passion and a different vision. There's a whole different vision of what the church should be. And I'm talking again just for the city. What is the vision? And I think we got different visions. So we're looking different ways. And because we're looking different directions, we're not together.
I think we have to get out of that mentality that some things that suburban folks do, for instance, one of the things they do is come to the soup kitchens, like St. Leo's or Man of Meals, and it reinforces every stereotype that they ever had. And if we instead don't serve them, sit down and talk to folks and see if you get a different idea of what's going on then.
And let your life be touched. No one knows everything. And I believe that we can learn from each other. Whether they're penniless, homeless, have a PhD and live in a mansion, each one of us can give to someone else. And so I guess the biggest thing you can do is share your life with them.
The Vatican Council made it so clear that what we have come to call now preferential option for the poor, that if you have to make a choice, your choice would be to stay where the poor are rather than to move where the more affluent are.
In the long run, the people most in need will be the people that suffer from them closing the churches. I believe that the church is supposed to represent the goodness of Jesus and the hope that Jesus provides. Without the churches being available for those that are in need, there is no hope. There is no way to provide for them.
to place so much of your advice coming from that corporate model, we think leaves out the whole idea of what the church as the people of God, as we define the church. People of God, the people have to be consulted, the people have to have a voice in the decision of what happens.
We're not a business, we're a church, and we're called to serve. We have a moral responsibility to do just that.